Hey y'all, welcome back. All right, so we had left off where I was going to be moving into my dad's. Um, for this house, my dad and Jean had actually lived in it for a little while before I moved in. I do recall spending a summer there before I ever moved in. So I do have plenty of memories of like many times going for walks during the summer, and because it was kind of out in the country, but off of a subdivision that was out in the country. So there was like no gas stations or anything nearby, but there was a neighborhood, you could say, where my where T and I would go roller skating or because yeah, we had an old pair of roller skates. I remember where I got them, but we would take our dogs and we go roller skating up and down the road because it was kind of hilly. And that was fun. Or we take our bikes, do that with the dogs. I remember because there was somebody else, one of them riding a 10 speed, at the bottom of the hill, and there was a curve, and there was a bunch of sand in the road. Did not go well. I went over the handlebars, and the 10 speed went behind me, up and over me, and I slid, and then so my left shoulder got some road rash. That was real fun. Not really. That sucked. While we were living at the house, I remember going back to the house and then having my dad clean out the wound, and it was a good couple inches around. I mean, it wasn't very deep or anything. It was a good layer, couple layers of skin. Left a good size scar for a while. By the time I graduated, the scar had been gone. But I remember my dad said I was a tough kid when it came to that because he used, I don't remember if it was rubbing alcohol or peroxide. I can't remember, but he sat me down on the toilet and took a toothbrush because there was so much sand in the wound. In order to clean it and keep it from getting infected, we had to get all the sand out, and so you had to use a toothbrush to. Oh, I didn't cry or anything. I just grinded my teeth and white knuckled on the toilet because I was sitting on the toilet, and yeah, well, he did that. It was also where I had bruised my tailbone. Tiana and I had taken the dogs roller skating, and we had this little game we would do. It was mostly I would go ahead, a few hundred feet or whatever, with me and whatever dog I had with, because my dad and Jean were raising and breeding dogs, and so we would play with the dogs and whatnot. And I had it was a little Sheltie at the time named Watson, and Tiana had her grandma's dog Sarah. Actually, I think it was a big white Samoyed, big Samoyed, and they were hanging back. And the game was is because T was a little bit smaller than I was, to get going really fast on the roller skates, is one of us would go ahead a few hundred feet and stop, and then the other one would be, obviously stopped in the back, and then the person who's ahead would start calling to the dog, getting them to run as fast as they can, pulling, and of course, it was good times. It was fun. I mean, a little bit of adrenaline rush, for going fast. I mean, I think at best we probably did maybe 20 miles an hour. But this one particular time, the dog I was with, I was going forward and I was starting to get some speed, and then the dog realized that T and her dog had stopped, and it suddenly stopped, and I was still going, and I had actually, in emotion, because I was holding on to the leash, it jerked me up off my feet and in a V shape directly down on my tailbone, on the blacktop, which, because this was a road, mind you. I mean, we're on a country road, so it wasn't like it was, extremely busy road by any means. Um, but yeah, it bruised my tailbone and caused a ripple effect to go up my back, um, due to the jarring. But I I couldn't I couldn't get up. I couldn't move when I first bruised my tailbone. And if you've ever bruised your tailbone, that's just it's a whole new kind of hurt. So much so that I had to get T to drag me off the side of the road, and because Watson was a small dog, I managed to hold him next to me while she went down the road to try and find me help because I couldn't move. I couldn't walk. I couldn't even stand up on my own. She had to in a crouching position. Just I was just enough up on my roller skates to roll me off into the gravel. And the next house down happened to be, it was a guy who worked for the ski resort in the area, for rescue. So he immediately knew what I what was wrong with me as soon as he heard. So he came, with his van and had a little donut for me to sit on, and he picked me up and very gently set me in his van, and then drove us back home and told my dad to get me to a chiropractor because I had clearly landed on my tailbone and caused some damage. And if it was not something that was looked after, it would cause issues down the road. And then, handed me to my dad, and, he left. My dad proceeded to, right after the guy, was out of sight, set me down on the ground, told me, you can walk, and you can forget about going to the chiropractor. I don't care. Next time, don't hurt yourself. And walked in the house. Mind you, to get into the house, we had to walk up a set of stairs. It's real nice. But I'm not surprised at this point in time, living there, that this is my dad's reaction, because by this point in time, there had been so many things already said about how I ate got nitpicked, when I ate got nitpicked, how often I ate got nitpicked. And it was all new to me because my mom never once made any comments about how I ate or anything, except for we weren't allowed to chew our food loudly. Like, we couldn't smack our food, which is something now I can't handle. But neither here nor there. But I was an active kid who didn't eat a lot, and then I was being ridiculed for it. I also wasn't I had more rules too than my stepbrother and stepsister, which progressed more and more the longer I lived there. I know we lived in that first house for a while. Oh, and that dog, who caused me to bruise my tailbone, later that day, got hit by a truck, and Dad had to shoot him to put him out of his misery because he was bleeding really bad out of his mouth. There was no way of I was going to be able to save that dog. I did, get to at least say goodbye to the dog before Dad shot him, which didn't help because I tried running after bruising my tailbone down the road after Tiana came running in screaming that he had been hit and was trying to come back down the driveway. Of course, because he was like my favorite dog at the time. He was the one I kind of wanted to keep for my own, but he wasn't able to be a breeding dog, so I wasn't allowed to keep him. So yeah, that really sucked. But I had a lot of cool memories from that place. I know we didn't stay there for the whole entire 6th grade year. But while we lived there, my stepbrother got a white German Shepherd whose name was Tasha. And then roughly around the same period of time, they had a cousin, Jay, who was living with us. He got a white Samoyed, well, I guess all Samoyeds are white, that he named Sasha. Good time. Before we moved out of that house, though, Jason took his dog Sasha and moved back home. He only stayed with us for a short period of time, I recall. It was not very long. Because they shared a room directly across from Tian and I, because we had bunk beds and shared a room. And then we moved to a really small little white house, a little rinky-dink town. I don't even remember where. Like, we didn't live there for very long. I want to say like 3-4 months, maybe. Because I remember Natasha having a batch of puppies while we lived there, along with, I think, Molly, our golden retriever did. Did we have Molly? Yeah, we had Molly at that time. And then we had a Pekingese too, Marty. And my depression started really bad there because I started punching walls. I was trying to hide it. It was my left hand all the time, but I always wore long sleeves so I could cover up my hand. And when my dad found out, you know, I just got told you should punch a pillow instead if you're angry. Nice. Didn't care why I was angry. Not at all. Not at all. Not to mention they started telling me I was fat because I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. I do recall, even in 6th grade, like I spent a lot of time home alone. Because Trav was out with his friends, T was at her dad's or wherever, and Dad and Jean were out doing whatever, and I was home alone. I spent a lot of time home alone. I actually started to really like it though. I'd rather be home alone. And then 6th grade year, this is how much I didn't want to be home. I had perfect attendance in school. But one thing I do remember living at that house, in that small little town, was because I did like roller skating so much, and we would go to the roller rink, like once or twice a month. We were allowed to go to the roller rink. I had wanted rollerblades really bad, and so for my birthday, that was what I got, was a pair of rollerblades, which was really cool, because that was what I really wanted. And I remember, even though, because my birthday is literally right around the corner, in a couple days, so being mid-February, especially at this time in northern Wisconsin, it's not like there's not a bunch of snow on the ground. So I took my rollerblades out and best I could, like, rollerbladed in the road around what little bit of road I could get on that had no snow, just so I could try them out because I was so excited about them. But I know we didn't live there for very long in that house because by the time it was warm out again, we had moved into Jean's mom's vacation home, which was a trailer on I don't remember how many acres. It was a flat piece of land out in the country. It was surrounded pretty much by fields. The back side of it had a horse ranch, and that took up the back, and then the right side of the house, like if you were standing and looking at it from the road, the right side was where the ranch was, and they had their house on the further down. There's a field in between us, and then on the other side, I don't remember what kind of field it was, but it was a field of some sort. I don't remember if it was corn or if it was like they did alfalfa or hay or something like that. And then across the street was fields, and then that backed up to the woods that was for logging. And there were several entry roads, dirt roads, like every, I don't know, quarter mile or something like that, they were for logging. And the yard was pretty big, and I did like living there. I want to say we lived there for a good portion of the year, because I remember it was still 6th grade when we moved in, and it was 7th grade when I started 7th grade in that house, and it was a 3-bedroom trailer. Because I'll say it wasn't until Dad and Jean bought the house that they stayed in until Tiana graduated. I wasn't around during that time, so the stories were different. But that was, I want to say, like halfway through 7th grade. So we moved into the trailer, like, I want to say it was like the tail end of like the 6th grade. It was starting to get warm just before school let out. And of course, northern Wisconsin, that usually wasn't until May. So, so there wasn't much memory I have of that place as far as end of 6th grade, except for I really liked having the horse farm behind us. And it wasn't like I was completely unfamiliar, because that was the vacation home for Jean's mom, so I'd been there and visited when I was up for summers. Because my dad and Jean met when I was in, in between 3rd and 4th grade. Well, they knew before I was done with 3rd grade, but so they had been together a couple years already and had actually lived in the first house for a little over a year by the time I moved in. So I had some good vacation, I rode plenty of bikes and stuff like that out in that area. But I only had the two like major things where I hurt myself. I did like that first house because we had a big garden. We had a raspberry bush, and it was a big, like, it was like a hedge of raspberries, and my dad's afraid of snakes, and watching him pick raspberries was always the best, because there's always little garden snakes in there. And they come puking out, and my dad, yeah, it was great. That was the one thing I did like. And then for school, for 6th grade, I only had one. I had one girl who kind of bullied me, but school wasn't all that bad in 6th grade. I wasn't popular, but I wasn't like the least unpopular, and only the one girl harassed me and bullied me, which ironically was my stepbrother's girlfriend's younger sister. Good times. She actually kind of bullied me hard. Like, in 6th grade it wasn't so bad. It was 7th grade that it progressed, so I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, because 7th grade was definitely a much more stuff that happened. But my depression definitely started not long after I moved in with my dad. And I don't know exactly, it didn't take long at all for them to start nitpicking me about eating habits. And I mean, it was just small stuff. And it didn't seem like much at all, but it definitely impacted me mentally and emotionally right away. Because I had never been talked to like that before. Like, my mom was always loving words, encouraging words. She did not talk bad about my dad. And then, and of course, any chance they got, they tried to badmouth my mom, and of course, which would confuse me, because whatever they were saying, it was like, that's not what I see, and the way they made it out was like, my mom always had people at the house whenever us kids were asleep, and I mean, like, they were trying to paint a picture of absolute, it was wrong, and I knew it was wrong then, because remember, I was already a kid who didn't sleep, and there was a lot of times I did wake up in the middle of the night, and guess what? Mom was asleep. So these raging parties that they kept trying to say my mom was having was just, it was confusing, because I was like, why are you lying so much about mom? Like, the only thing it did was make me not trust them more, which it by the time I moved out, I didn't trust my dad at all. And unfortunately, I believed my dad in his words, which got worse. Like I said, it started off with just, my 6th grade year was just them nitpicking me about my physical appearance, how I ate and stuff like that, which of course it started off with the eating, which then led to my physical appearance, because I started depression, started eating, and I wasn't allowed to go do a lot of things, and I was stuck home alone. where when I lived with mom, I was rarely ever home alone. In fact, I was ever rarely ever inside. We didn't watch TV. Mom was like, if it was nice outside, get out. And it was so weird to have mom who was trusting and we were allowed to do a lot to what felt like zero trust at all. Again, I still talk to my dad. Things have completely changed now. But that was just the start of things. And we'll pick up for the summer of in between 5th and 6th grade, or 6th and 7th grade, excuse me, in my next video. So have a good day, guys. Bye.